Albany Pine Bush Preserve Commission's quarterly board meeting. My name is Keith Gertz. I'm the Regional Director for DEC's Region 4. And I also serve as the board chair. I'd like to go around the table and introduce the Executive Director and the rest of the board members. To my left is Chris Harvard, Executive Director of the Albany Pine Bush. To his left is Mike McLaughlin, representing Albany County. And then there's Brad Glass, representing the City of Albany. Representing the State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation is Janet Zuckerman. Next to Janet is Nancy Pearson, Citizen Rep. Also here from Colony is Supervisor Paul Mahan. And representing Town of Gilliland is Supervisor Peter Barber. And next to Peter is Citizen Rep John Brust, fresh from Canada. First order of business is to consider the minutes of the last quarterly board meeting. Do I have a motion? Second? Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next I'll open the floor to the public. If anybody from the public has anything they'd like to say to the board, now is your opportunity. Anybody? Moving right along, we'll get to reports. I wanted to make an announcement that the DEC should be closing on a property that the TNC has been holding for quite a long time. We should be closing on this month. It's just short of 30 acres on Michael Drive. We anticipate the closure on that to be imminent, actually. We also expect to close in a few months a property on Albany Street that's being held by MHLC, 7.2 acres that was donated. And we're in the early stages of working on a purchase with MHLC on 15.5 acre property on Albany Street. Any questions about that? Okay, I will hand it over to Chris.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me, no, I forgot. Anybody from the board have anything they'd like to talk about? Anything to raise? Now.
Okay. Probably the most important thing to me that I just mentioned is, I'm just going to finish 2 copies here. Yesterday was the last day of legislative session for 2018. For those of you who pay attention to those things. There was a bill in both the Senate and the Assembly to modify our legislation that was put in by DEC and through the governor's office to modify our legislation to allow the commission to hold title. I think we've talked about that in the past. Primary reason for that is so we can actually act more quickly when there's a piece of real property that becomes available, and we can work with, Keith was mentioning MHLC, Mohawk Hudson Land Conservancy. We have a cooperative partnership with them, so we would work with Mohawk Hudson to be able to close a piece of property more quickly than we can waiting for the state of New York. The state of New York has this massive backlog of properties, which is a good thing, but there's only so many staff to do that. So we sometimes will end up having to wait 2 years, 3 years, 24 to 36 months to close a piece of property, and the property owners don't want to wait. So this change in our legislation, assuming that the governor signs it, will allow us to be able to borrow from our reserves, to buy property, to hold it, and wait patiently, and then work with DEC to then reimburse the commission for that expense. We get the money back, we put it in our reserve account, we wait, we do it again. So it's kind of like a small revolving fund. It's going to work on a limited basis based on a limited amount of funds that we have in our reserve account, but it finally gives us that option. We've talked a number of times as a board in executive session when I've had a lot of confidential conversations with property owners. We've seen a lot of properties slip away. So this is an opportunity, so we're very happy about that. And that press statement that's going around is from the Nation Conservancy. And the Nation Conservancy played a key role in this. Michigan Conservancy is a nonprofit, can lobby, and they do lobby. So they work pretty hard on the Assembly side because it passed in the Senate pretty quickly, but the Assembly took over 3 weeks and right down to the last day in the afternoon, so that's good news. So if Jessica was here, I'd say thanks. If she walks in, we'll say thanks to Jess. Just a couple other things. You may have noticed when you pulled in today in the parking lot, the area that we burned an area that was about 8 acres last week successfully. We tried yesterday, we as in Tyler Briggs, our fire management specialist, and other staff and volunteers, we tried to burn a 10-acre unit near the thruway yesterday, but the weather didn't cooperate, so we shut that down after about maybe half an acre. But for this season alone, we're about 194, 195 acres. Remember, the general goal is to burn 200 acres a year. More is better, but we're right on track for that.
Chris, could you explain why the weather did not cooperate?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, exactly.
You can't do that.
No, I can't. What was the problem with the weather?
Exactly.
So the problem with the weather was, the forecast was to become partly sunny, and humidities to drop into the low 40% range, so around 41% was the spot weather forecast. The cloud cover never broke, and then the forecast changed that the cloud cover was going to remain through the majority of the day. So that cloud cover has a strong influence on the fire behavior, and how fire actually, the likelihood of, the probability of ignition is actually the term, but how likely is that fire going to burn, and how readily is it going to burn and move across the landscape. On cloudy days, humidity remains high, atmosphere remains more stable, the vegetation, the fuels that we actually burn are not warmed up, the moisture stays more on the fuels. So cloud cover in and of itself has a significant impact. And you can see it anytime we've been on prescribed burns over the years. You could be having a burn that's rolling along, fantastic consumption, great rates of spread, some interesting flame lengths, all to have a big cloud bank come in, even if it's temporary, and you watch the fire just settle right down. So it just wasn't working yesterday. We were using a lot of drip torch fuel, and that's not, we just weren't going to reach objectives. So it's there for another day. To help.
Basically, it didn't burn efficient enough.
Right, it was real patchy. So you'd have a patch that's half the size of this open area in front of us that burned nice and complete, but there's green vegetation everywhere else, and that vegetation needs to burn. And it was an area that was mowed before with mowing slash, and that mowing slash needs to burn, and for a whole variety of reasons.
Chris, real quick question. I know you said notice this out when you do a burn. Do you ever send notice out when you're not going to do a burn? Or if you're going to shorten the burn? Because I know in my town, some people adjust their schedule based on when it's burning.
We do. I mean, we do. The only time so yes, we notify multiple people, individuals, organizations, agencies when we burn as part of notification. When we're done burning, we notify dispatch. So dispatch in Gildan would get a notification that when the fire is done and out. So even though we didn't burn a whole unit, it took until 4:30, 5 o'clock to mop it all up and make sure that there's no smoke and it's safe to go out there. Once that's done, the area is safe, the fire is cold, then we call dispatch and tell them that it's out. So the only thing I could think of is, like in Gildan, who uses Nixle. I think Colleen uses Nixle too.
Yeah, we get Nixle all the time with the burn, but we don't get a Nixle alert of either cancellation or other reduction. I don't recall getting them.
No, I mean, that's an interesting question. Could dispatch send out an Nixle that says the fire is now complete?
Yeah.
Because it could be a situation where we started at 11 o'clock, and we call, and if we didn't burn at all, we're going to call dispatch and say we didn't burn, or it's done. So it would be up to dispatch to be able to send out another Nixle announcement. What do you know what Nixle is? It's basically it's a system, it's a company that municipalities buy, and you sign up for it, and you get a text message. So you get a text message at home, and it says, prescribed fire, controlled burn, etc. Town of Gildan, Jason 155 and through. It's incredibly efficient tool. HS. Any other questions about fire? Okay. Thank you for your help. We already said that. I passed around the press statement from yesterday. I don't know if you've been here since. It's a long day, long week, long June. Just a couple of quick things. Salary increases went through for this fiscal year, going back to April, Lisa, 14th. It was early to mid-April. So the division of budget sent out a budget bulletin for this year, D 1137, I think it was, calls for a 2% COLA increase for management confidential staff in the state. Our bylaws basically recognize that our staff follow that. You know that we're not, we follow that as a standard. So 2% increase for COLA, 1% of this last round of parity increases, which is to bring these EMCs up to their civil service counterparts. And it also included what we call step increases or performance advances. So that was implemented, it was budgeted for, it was less than what we budgeted for. That went into effect back in April officially. I'm going to stop there so we keep on schedule. Any questions?
Okay. Next on the agenda is Neil Gifford, the report from the technical committee.
Yeah, you do.
I don't have a quarterly report before you at this meeting because the committee didn't meet. There hasn't been any new development activity. We did just receive a packet for a 600 kilowatt solar farm in Gilliland on Curry Road. That's a public hearing coming up on July 18th. So I anticipate that we will be meeting in July. And the only activity that the committee had was our annual June 12th field trip to look at fire and silvicultural management in the preserve, which many of you attended. So, if you want any more detail than that.
No, that's good. And one question, how many acres was this sold?
When is it? I didn't go to the whole packet yet, John. I think it's like a 30 or a 40 acre piece of property.
The property itself is a little, like 30, 35 acres.
It's a big piece in the flood protection area on the south side of Curry Road.
Questions?
Okay. Yep. We have Lisa Anthony with the financial report. Good morning.
Our financial reports will represent 1 month through April 30, 2018. First, I will start with a statement of financial activities. On the revenue side, dues and contributions are very close to budget for April. Government grants and incomes is directly related to expenses and is slightly under. Mitigation fees are 0 for April. Lease revenue is on budget for April. And other revenue is at 78% of budget due to merchandise sales and program fees. So total revenue came in at 97% of budget through the end of April. Moving on to expenses, personnel and fringe are at 97% of budget for April. Travel and training is slightly under budget. Contractual is on budget for April. And communications and occupancy both are both on 96% of budget. Supplies and equipment are 98% of budget. And other expenses are slightly under. This is just for miscellaneous fees, payroll fees, etc. Overall, both came in at 97% revenue and expenses, giving us a total net income of $24.91. Okay, moving on to statement of net assets. Cash decreased, and this is just due to an increase in spending. Our conservation and land reserves remain the same. Grants receivable increased, and this is due to money owed from PBC and assessment paid. Inventory, accounts receivable decreased slightly. Inventory remained the same. And prepaid expenses decreased, and this is due to the timing of year-end expenses, and this will happen once a year as we accrue prepaid for the end of the year. Investments decreased $21,000 due to a slight loss in all approved funds. Capital assets remain the same, and deferred outflows remain the same, and this will remain the same on all financials with the exception of one time a year. This is the actuarial calculation of New York State Retirement Fund. So total assets decreased $53,000 over last year to a decrease in cash and prepaid expenses and investments. On the liability side, accounts payable and accrued expenses decreased slightly due to less money owed. And deferred revenue decreased, and this is due to an advance from PBC that was utilized. And the New York State pension liability, much like the figure up above, is an actuarial calculation that we will get and will change once a year from the New York State retirement funds. So total liabilities decreased $35,000 over last year due to a decrease in deferred revenue from DEC. On the net asset side, capital assets remain the same, reserved assets remain unchanged, and unreserved assets decreased $18,000, giving us a total decrease due to a positive 2.5 NOI and $18,000 net. Any questions on the statement of net assets? Okay. Moving on to investments. This just represents 1 month as well. We had a slight decrease in all three funds, 0.49 in the reserve fund and the Discovery Center endowment and the endowment, both at a 0.11 and 0.10% loss, giving us a loss of $21,000. Just a slight loss. Negative, looking very big positive on the equity side. Any questions on it? Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to be moving on to the action items. There's 2 action items.
Okay. I can, let me start with, right before action item A is a memo that went to the audit committee and to the board, and it's from the audit selection committee. So if you had a chance to review it, if not, I'll summarize it real quickly. It was time to go out to renew our audit services contract. We had used Majestic Company for a number of years, and we decided it would be good to go out to bid. So we put together an RFP, this audit selection committee, which was made up of Don Sapos, Nancy Pearson, who were both on the audit committee, and then Lisa and I, who are staff that sit on the audit committee. Put together an RFP, sent it out, put it in the contract reporter, sent it out to all local WBE audit firms that were basically within the general capital region area, a little further. We got 6 firms that responded. Of those 6, we interviewed 5, primarily because the 6th firm didn't respond to an interview. So we interviewed 5, and then at the end of the day, at the end of each interview, we had a discussion, evaluated them qualitatively, discussion looking at their proposal, their experience. We did background checks. We did references, that's right. We're not doing background checks on auditors. Yeah, but thorough's all right. So, that's fun. So we checked references, and at the end of the day, we came to the conclusion that we wanted to stay with Majestic. All the firms, they were very close, they're within 10% of their fees. We asked for 5 years. Basically, we do a 3-year contract with two one-year extensions, so we wanted to know what the cost would be for 5 years. They were all pretty similar. So we, like I said, we decided to stay with Majestic for a whole variety of reasons, and we're actually going to hear from Majestic, so don't take this don't get your head, unless your head get too big. But seriously, this is a firm that responds to us quickly, promptly. When we ask for reports, we get them early. They do everything that we ask them to. There's nothing more that we could ask for. They don't charge us for extra things during the year. We talk to them throughout the year. They'll come and meet with us. They just do fantastic work. We've been pleased. So and the price was continued to be right, so we decided to stay with Majestic. So that kind of leads into the first action item, action item A. Action item A is there's 3 multi-year contracts. As an authority, the board is required to approve multi-year contracts. The first 2 are with Northeast Network Solutions. One is for managed IT services, so that's the company that deals with our IT support, right? The second is also through Northeast Network Solutions for a disaster recovery backup system. So we use them to pass through to another company called Barracuda, and that's our backup system. It's a 12 terabyte backup system. So that's a separate contract. And those contracts go through August of 2021. And that's based on how long that backup system goes for, and then it would be time to renew. So those are the first two contracts. And then the third one is for Wojcicki. And the Wojcicki contract we have not yet entered into. The Wojcicki contract would be for 3 years with 2 one-year extensions based on performance. So that's kind of a quick administrative summary of what action item A is about. Questions? I want to actually thank Don and Nancy for working with Lisa and I. It was a long process. We spent a lot of time, everybody spent a lot of time reading and discussing, and we're appreciated.
So can I have a motion to consider the multi-year contracts? John, second? All in favor? Aye.
Okay, action item B, second resolution. This is a resolution that you see every June. As an authority, we're required to adopt these and pass a resolution to adopt these. So I put them all in one resolution. The first one is the assessment of internal controls for 17-18. There's a statement that goes along with that. It's a one-page statement. It's basically a template from the authority's budget office, but it ties right back into our audit, which you're going to hear about from Jesse and Frank in a minute. The second one is the annual report on our prompt payment policy. The organization has a prompt payment policy. Actually, it's a prompt payment policy statement. Basically what that means is the organization must pay its bills within 30 days of receipt if they're accurate. And we do that. We do for, it's usually like net. We pay our bills weekly, so that's in there. There's the annual procurement report, which is one of the procurement reports that Lisa does and I work with her on. That is just the URL in this. You got that electronically. That is many, many pages. So it's all the vendors, all the contracts that we did for the year. And it's very long, so I didn't include that. And then finally at the end is the annual report, the financial summary, that is also Paris reporting. That's done through Paris, and those are identical to the audit. Those are the audited numbers. And that's it. Any questions?
Okay, can I have a motion to consider the public authority compliance act, please? Second? All in favor?
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to hear from Frank from Wojcicki and Company on the audit and commission.
Morning. Try not to speak too long since Chris did a real nice introduction. Sour taste after this.
Frank, I'm glad you're here.
I know, he said the bar way too long. I'm Frank Berger, partner with Wojcicki and Company. I know the audit committee knows who I am because I've been involved in these meetings in capacity as a manager. But you as a board, this is your first time seeing me, so again, partner with Jesse. I have 2 reports here that I want to present. We conducted our audit as of March 31st, 2018, which is the Commission's fiscal year right now. So I'm going to start with the smaller report, the non-bound one. This is a required audit communication under generally accepted accounting standards, or auditing standards and government auditing standards. The required communication that I'm going to hit the highlights on here, which is mainly on page 2. Just want to report that we had no difficulties or disagreements in performing and completing our audit management. If that had happened, the audit committee would have known well in advance of last week's meeting and today's meeting as well. And it's also important, we're required to report on corrected and uncorrected misstatements, which there were none. So we proposed no audit adjustments when we conducted our audit, nor did we have any uncorrected or immaterial adjustments that we were required to report to those charging governments. So the numbers that Lisa reports to you at your meetings on a quarterly basis are accurate. We've made no changes to those. That's a testament to the work that Lisa and her team does here from your town give the board an understanding of kind of how quick the timeline is. As I said here, March 31st year end. We were here in April to conduct some planning, go over internal control, risk assessments, back for final field work, so to speak, in early May. And then I did a presentation in March Friday. So it's a pretty quick turnaround from March 31st. The fact that we don't make any adjustments really helps make that process go less quickly. Any questions on this document? Okay. Move on to the audited financial statements. Pages 5 through 7 is our independent auditor's report. These are really the only pages in this document that belong to the Jesky company. They're on our letterhead with our signature on it. There's page, the first page, just page 5, explains management's responsibility, which is they're responsible for the preparation and interpretation of the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Our responsibility as auditors is to provide an opinion on the financial statements. We provided an unmodified, which is effectively a clean opinion on the financial statements for the year that did March 31st, 2018 and 2017. On page 7, we make reference to another report, which is on pages 24 and 25, which is required by government auditing standards, where we look at compliance with provisions of laws, regulations, and contracts here at the Commission that's required under government auditing standards. That report, we noted that there were no instances of non-compliance that came as a result from our audit procedures, which is effectively the best report we can provide on that. That's on pages 24 and 25. The nice thing about conducting an audit in accordance with government auditing standards is you have the end of this discussion analysis, which runs for 4 pages in each report. That gives you a really good overview of what happened year over year for the Commission. So if that was all you read, you could get a good understanding of what happened each year. On the first page, you see your total assets increased about $294,000, and your change in that position was about a positive change of about $211,000. And those are mostly mainly related to your investment activity, investment income that's brought into the portfolio during the year. And you finished with an unrestricted net position of $7.6 million. So you have a very strong financial position here at the Commission. And you're basically a strong net asset position. Does anyone have any questions on the audit or the reports that you've seen? Thank you. We look forward to continuing to work with you.
Great, very too. Thanks, Frank.
Okay, next up is Tony Daniels with Central Architecture and Planning. He's doing a presentation on a conceptual ground design for the Discovery Center.
Actually, Blake.
I'm going to do a quick intro and then we'll turn it over to Tony. We just have a little bit of technology to get going, so bear with me. Yeah, thank you. All right. So, like I said, I'm just going to do a quick introduction and then we'll turn it over to Cycle and their team. My name's Blake. I haven't met all of you, but I'm the Discovery Center manager and I'm the project lead for the Discovery Center grounds team. We have some exciting stuff to present to you today about our grounds conceptual design, and we hope to engage your input as well on improving that design. At the last commission meeting, Aaron Keinel gave you a little glimpse into what we were up to, and you may have heard a little bit informally from Steve, who's on our team, or Chris, about our progress, but there's some interim results to share today, and I'll do a quick intro and then turn it over. So our team consists of Steve Rice, Chris Hauber, Aaron Keinel, Wendy Craney, Neil Gifford, Jesse Hoffman, and myself. And we've hired Cycle Architecture and their team consisting of Moe Inc., Steven Stimson and Associates, and Floyd Albert to help us in this project. So just a little bit of context about where we are in this process. So it really follows a pretty simple strategic management project process as outlined on this slide. And by all means, this is a continual process. In fact, the development of the Discovery Center the first time around followed this process as well. So we're starting there at evaluating what we have in front of us. We have a beautiful Discovery Center, beautiful exhibits, grounds, and we've been here for 10 years. So moving from that, we move into a more formal collection of information that leads us into a strategy formulation and ultimately implementing that strategy and then back around again. We're going to do this for forever. Here. So being open for 10 years now, we've been managing the grounds, making alterations for improved performance and collecting information about how our visitors use the grounds and how the grounds fit within the context of the Discovery Center and the preserve. We received a ton of feedback over the past 10 years about the grounds from the public, from you, our board members, our tenants, and our staff about challenges and opportunities that we have on the ground. And that list was a growing list. Included challenges from maintaining the grounds and safety to opportunities for improved curb appeal and habitat creation. And as that list grew, we decided to take a little bit more of a strategic approach to it. So the grounds team formed, and we tried to synthesize everything into a clear vision and goals. So our vision is that visitors are able to find the Discovery Center. As they arrive, they experience awe and inspiration. They're immersed in a Pinegardens aesthetic that has been intentionally designed to reveal to the visitor the best of the pine bush. Their needs are met with access to bathrooms, water fountains, trash cans, benches, gathering places, interpretation, and information that are all clearly identified. Their interpretive experience is just as great inside as it is outside and provides visitors with piqued curiosity about the uniqueness of the preserve. They walk away feeling a sense of pride and appreciation for the Pine Bush and Discovery Center as a part of their community and as a reflection of their contributions. Further distilling that down into 3 goals. We want to create an entry experience that welcomes, inspires, informs, is safe, and comforts visitors. We want to enhance the ecology and showcase the best of the Pine Barrens, and we want to honor our brand. We want people to walk away saying that was amazing. We want to engage them in the unique nature of the preserve. So that gives us a really great verbal communication of that list and of where we want to go. And this is where Cycle came in and their team. Now we need to start to visualize that so we can communicate that vision a little bit more clearly. So our process started really wide and broad as there's tons of approaches to solving all of these challenges and meeting these opportunities. We really worked over the past few weeks to narrow that focus to come with one cohesive direction. And ultimately, this conceptual design is going to allow us to visually represent that direction. It's going to also give us a plan for phasing, and that's really important for us in order to use our resources wisely, to help us maximize impact at each phase as this process goes, and to make our way through what could potentially be a really long process of implementation. So It's going to give us cost estimates as well, ballpark figures that are going to allow us to engage the right level and the right type of funding. And ultimately, it's going to move us into the next stages. And so, Cycle is here to present to you today, not a finished plan. We have another round of edits coming. This isn't a final design. Although it's been thoroughly discussed and analyzed by our team with Cycle, it still has room to move and shift. And it should give you a good idea of where we want to go. They're going to present to you some of the background as to why we landed where we did and give you some precedents or some examples of how other people have dealt with a certain concept. So as you listen and watch, think about providing our team with feedback on improvement. And there's going to be limited time for questions and feedback at the end, so I encourage you to send them to me directly. We are on a quick turnaround on this, so if you could send me your comments by June 27th, which is a week away, that would be great. And my contact information is on the sheets you have there, up here, and in the back of the room. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cycle. We're going to have to switch cords here, and we'll get you their presentation. I'm going to leave the lights off, and you can let them on for a minute. Lights might be good. Okay.
Hi, everyone. While the switch is ongoing, I just wanted to preface this presentation with a couple of words. My name is Tony Daniels. I'm the principal of Cycle Architecture and Planning, and it's been a real delight to work on this project and to discover the pine bush here. This is a nationally significant landscape. It's like no place I've ever been. I first saw this landscape in I think it was December or January in the snow, and I was really amazed that just right here we have this, and it is in fact a nationally significant landscape. So I'm not alone in my assessment, and neither are you. So our presentation today is going to move very quickly because there's a lot of material. We've been allotted 20 minutes. I'm going to give a brief introduction. Caitlin Martisevich from my office will talk about some of our planning process and some of our initial thoughts. I'll come back and talk about some of the design concepts that were developed. Glenn Valentine, our landscape architect from Stephen Simpson Associates, will present some of the landscape features that were discussed, and then Joey Stein from MOE will talk about the exhibits and narrative aspects of this conceptual plan. So we began with, as Blake described, a variety of inputs and feedback that the Discovery Center had received over the years. For the types of improvements that were required, safety, amenities, curb appeal, new exhibits, etc. And you can see it broadly covers the entire grounds. And when we set about to do this, we begin with what's called a site resources analysis. I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin to describe that for a minute.
Sure. And with site resource analyses, we have all this feedback, and we want to find ways to prioritize and assess them from means of if there was issues of stormwater, and if there was a potential for moving the leach field that's out front, and that has to do with curb appeal as well. We looked at sewer and sanitary, and we also looked at traffic concerns and questions of safety with the illegal U-turns happening in the front, and as well as pedestrian traffic. We also just did a quick analysis of pathways through the site to see how all of the different users are experiencing the current Discovery Center. We also look at other things like solar analyses and wind direction. And one thing that came out of our wind analysis is this is a topographic model of this area of a almost 10-mile radius. And what we started to see was that wind direction really had an impact on the topography of the dune landscape. And if you zoom in closer to the Discovery Center, what we found was the bank building, or the Discovery Center, had been put right in the middle of what we started to call the Great Dune, or a big dune. which had been cut to make the bank building. So this is a representation of where that had been. And we thought that was really important to this place as a a national landmark, as a preserve, and as the mission statement to kind of reclaim this landscape and make it viable, and as a globally rare inland pine barren. We thought this is a really good place to start as a design concept. Outside currently, we think the experience of the pine bush, though there's a representation of it out front, it's kind of contained in those steel boxes, which are beautiful. But we started to think how else we might engage the visitors and people who are coming to the Discovery Center, so that they might have a different first impression, and they might have different ways of experiencing the dunes. So we see going over, extending out over, going through, and even being inside of the dune. With that in mind, we thought if we are organizing our thoughts and proposing restoring dunes on the site, how big do they have to be to have their effect, their desired effect on the grounds? It even got to the site if the New Corner Road cut through this big dune that we were imagining, even people on the road would have a sense of it, that you would be driving through. You yourself are part of this cut through what is really a significant landscape, and then you're thinking about ideas of bridging, bringing those sets together, defragmenting the preserve as a whole.
And you can see right there how a study of the site starts to bring out design concepts, and that is an outline of the process that we followed. Dune restoration being perhaps the largest design concept that we addressed in this conceptual plan. We also looked at transforming this building, taking it from something that has the traditional feeling of a bank building to something that's more aligned with the vision and aesthetic of this organization. We approached reorganization of the parking and pathways through the site in much the same way. And we felt that there were opportunities to expand the outdoor exhibit space and interactive space around the Discovery Center. And that also forms a major design concept. We came up with some concepts for outdoor learning, and that these include both facilities, but also, as Joey will speak into in his portion of the presentation, exhibit narratives and ways that people can interact with the landscape. This was sort of knit together holistically into a plan for the whole site. And we do have sort of a placeholder new concept plan now that is shown as a site plan and is reflected in the views and images and models that we're going to present here. Now, also, there are some closely related to narrative. There is programming. And we have some very specific program elements that we've used to organize this master plan. First is dunes being a critical piece of our thinking about the site. We have a dune garden. Fire also, as you know, is an important activity that occurs here that the public should be educated about. So we wanted to incorporate fire. Likewise, there are some unique aspects of pine bush and the way it handles water and interacts with water. So that's there. The diversity garden, which you'll see on the screen, is meant to showcase the entire ecosystem of the pine barrens. Glenn will address that in some more detail. The outdoor classroom is also it is what it is. It's a place for people to go out into the pine bush and be educated. There's also a possibility for a bird exhibit within one of these structures. And finally, we developed the concept for the bridge. And a bridge does answer the need for some curb appeal or gesture out to, out to the public along New Carter Road. But it also serves to knit together and address fragmentation of the preserve, by bringing one side across the road to the other. So we're going to very quickly go through these pieces of the puzzle, and hopefully by the end you'll have a sense of what our conceptual master plan is all about. Facilities. So one of the first things that we looked at was parking and circulation through the site, and pathways through the site. We have developed with our team a concept whereby instead of entering the parking lot the way we enter now, if you drive in kind of at the front of the parking lot, now we said no, we should enter at the back of the parking lot. And that will contribute a lot to pedestrian safety. Just because you won't have traffic going through, there'll be fewer blind corners where cars get in or out of pedestrians. We also thought that the parking lot offered perhaps the best opportunity to provide a somewhat large solar array on the property. And we did some using a system advisor model software. We developed a projection that we can get about 280,000 kilowatt hours. We compared that to bills from the facility, and that's about 90% of the energy use of the facility. So by covering the parking lot with canopy position, we can really get almost 100% of the savings. We have a bus drop-off area programmed as well. It's at one end of the parking lot. And we wanted to give a cover and also a sense, a place for school students to gather that was its own place. And we have this structure, which we'll hear more about later and see many views of. It's a concrete structure. Looking specifically at the building, we think there are some opportunities here in this building to improve energy efficiency and in the life cycle of the building, so that with a huge photovoltaic array in the parking lot, we might approach net zero for the building, which I think is something we ought to aspire to for all buildings these days. Next. Finally, the appearance of the building. We wanted to break down the idea that this was once a bank building and make it something that is more, representative of the preserve. One idea was to bring the dune up around the building more closely. The other was to alter the building's roof line with some kind of an attachment. And another possibility was to use some kind of super graphic or screen in front of the building. And I think we're representing here, next slide please, versions of these approaches. Go back one please. You have a before and after. And around the top of the building, there is this screen or this cowl, these lupin petals or butterfly wings or whatever you want to call them. And then you can also see in the front, where the current leach field and drive-through area is, we've actually raised the grade there, so that you're getting more landscape in your view. We also have a larger sign in the front and an island here in the roadway, which will prevent illegal U-turns. And here's a view from approaching from the parking lot. With you see sort of this graphic screen at the top. We've eliminated the gable in the building and given sort of a more contemporary gesture right at the entrance. And we have a much more detailed approach to exhibit and planning in front of the building. Outdoor classrooms, because the preserve is burned for maintenance, we had to come up with a fireproof solution for the outdoor classroom. want to build it out of wood, so it would be a very short term. Which is something to consider. I mean, okay, you just build a classroom every year. My kids do that in school. They build like a Native American house. But we thought that we would show something in concrete. Next slide. But we also wanted it to, interact with nature in a way that, that it was somehow tied to the surrounding. So perhaps burying it partially next. And, we decided that we could try to work with like sort of a dune-shaped form with, sort of the inside carved out to create this classroom. It would be about this size. And we felt that this type of structure could be incorporated throughout the preserve. Here it is at the bus drop-off area, and by what we're calling the play dune in the back. More about that in a moment. And finally, I wanted to introduce the pedestrian bridge. Idea that we talked about this all extensively. This was do we even show this? It's a big gesture. It started to grow. At one point, we thought that it would actually, physically take landscape from one side of New Carter Road to the other, while creating a gateway. But in the end, what we came to is more like this that top left precedent. Go ahead. We thought that a really simple structure that had the least amount of impact might be best. We thought of a location for it actually just kind of, there's a sort of stand of pine trees that you see right on the road here. Sort of mature pines, kind of on the high point. So we would take the bridge on the other side of that, and across the road at that point, so that as you walked on the bridge, you would be sort of passing through the pine bush landscape. Next, I think that Glenn, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk more about our exhibit.
Thanks, Tony. So thanks, everybody. I just wanted to start very briefly by saying, as a landscape architect, working on this kind of landscape is the first in my lifetime, and really incredibly exciting. The idea of designing a fire garden. I have kids, and they're like, a fire garden? Are you serious? You're building a fire garden? They can't believe it. It's just such an exciting idea, or a dune garden. So we're really excited about this. I'm going to show some ideas about the overall landscape, and then some kind of eye-level views of what some of the gardens might look like. So here's the overall plan. Tony did a pretty good description of some of the programming of this space. Most of the design centers around what the reserve is trying to do, which is maintain a level of diversity. So this middle section here is what we're calling a diversity garden. And then around that, there's a series of other gardens that describe the history of how this landscape can be in a kind of abstract way, and the work that's needed to maintain it. So here we have a fire garden. I'm going over these quickly because we'll show some images, enlargements of them in just a moment. Here's a fire garden that explains some of that process. This water garden, which you come across, talks about the history of Lake Albany. It was here and gave us all this sand. A dune garden next to that really talks about the morphology of these dunes and how they were created and how they're changed by wind. And then, as Tony mentioned, this dune exploration garden, the idea there being that kids could get off the bus and actually engage with the dunes. They could run right into the sand. They could be the agents of change on this site and really engage with the landscape, which we thought was just a fantastic idea. As Tony said, when we started this whole process, we realized that there was this huge dune that wraps all the way around the site. And that image that Caitlin showed of this 10-mile radius of this dune field, we were frankly blown away by. So from that image, the dune became the prevalent form, and we really worked hard to make this repeated landform the signature of the center. So it defines space, to enclose these gardens that I just described a moment ago. And it also gives that kind of curb appeal out at the street and gives some separation between Carter Road and these gardens and defines space. Why don't we move on to the first garden? The first one is the diversity garden. We look to the Lady Bird Johnson Center as a model for inspiration, one of the best diversity centers in the country. And there, the individual species are in these planters, and it gives you a sense to understand each one of the species in isolation. Next. So here's an image of our diversity garden. This is taken from looking from the actual gateway into the preserve back into this long linear garden that you saw with these raised beds, which are these right here. So we envision these raised beds, each one of them being a kind of container of one of the key species of the preserve, one more movement or something else, that would together form a tapestry of all of the plants in the center and give educators a chance to point out, here's what a lot of bracken fern might look like altogether. Here's what a lot of movement might look like altogether. And just understand them in isolation, so it becomes kind of a teaching tool, an encyclopedia for students going out into the preserve. Also, it can become an inspiration for homeowners who are coming here and looking for plants that they can use to do landscaping around their house. Here's an image that Tony showed earlier of the transformation of the garden. This also shows the water garden, which is the first thing that you go over when you enter the center. You have a bridge, and you have this kind of crescent-shaped water garden. And as I mentioned, that's representative of Lake Albany, which was originally what was here, all of you know, most of you know, was what this whole area was, a lake, and that's where all the sand came from, the bed of this lake. So we want that to be the first thing that you're introduced to. It's also an opportunity to present some of the other diversity of the site, here, turtles, and the turtle species that are in the preserve. Next, we looked at dune gardens. There's two different kinds, really, that we have here, and these were the inspirations. So you can imagine, as I said, with my kids, they were pretty excited about the idea of a science center where you go and you do something like this. This is Great Sand Dunes National Park, and we really want that experience here. And this is, that's Maya Lin's wave field. That just shows sort of the power that a dune can have, repeated and sort of abstracted. So this is an image from Carter Road, and you can see these two long dunes here. We really wanted those dunes both to provide some screening of all this busy traffic and these new outdoor spaces, but also to allow the dune itself to be the signature of the center and really put the lupin out on the street to make that what the center is about, along with new signage. And here, as Tony described, here's your drop-off. So you have this outdoor gathering space or educational classroom, but right behind it you have this huge restored dune. This was the area that was cut away originally when the parking lot was made for the bank. So we want to bring that back as an area where kids can engage. We think that's going to be a wonderful first experience for kids coming to the center. Next, we looked at the fire garden idea. It's a tricky concept. We put some ideas out here with kids out in the garden, and we got a lot of feedback like, be careful, that's really not going to work. So we had to rethink that a little bit, but we think it's really critical that, you know, today you can see the burn that's happening, that just happened, which is fantastic, but it's not always the case that there's a burn right here at the center, and not very often that you get to see an actual burn. So we wanted the opportunity to create a garden where maybe on a weekly basis during the season or twice a week, you could have a very small scale burn like this, where kids could watch the actual experience, see what the center does, the work of the center. And that these could be done in sequence. So not only would you see the activity of burning the garden or burning to maintain the garden, you'd see the evolution of that species through the season. This would be the last one burned, and then a week later, and a week later, and a week later, until it's ready to burn. And then you can see also the restoration of that landscape. You can get to see the plants beginning to come back to life. So you'll understand this whole cycle of burning and regeneration within this garden. Joey.
So I'm Joey. from Albany Inc., the principals there, and we looked at the narrative. We start by listening to who you are and what you want to become. This has everything to do with the soul of the Pine Barrens and the soul of the team we've been working with. And this is where I get to say is that it's such a pleasure to be working with this particular team. But honestly, more than just a pleasure, it's been super exciting because the work you guys do is incredibly important. And you make conservation fun. So that's a huge message that this preserve brings to the world. You're already leaders in the world of ecology. You reach out to your neighbors, your community here. People are starting to know who you are. We see your leadership expanding. We see your influence expanding. So what you've seen here is an expanded concept for your ideas, more spaces, more programming for teaching opportunities, and so next slide. So, and here's an example of another way to reach out to yet more people. Everyone has a cell phone. Some of you may be abhorrent to the idea of using cell phones in the park, but some of your visitors might be appalled at the idea of burning your park too. So, anyway, this is a great way to actually, you can't have a burn every day. You can actually use VR experiences, augmented reality, to actually see what burning a particular landscape might look like. You can play with time. If you want to actually see that glacier in Lake Albany, you want to see that sand forming, you can use this to scan over the horizon and actually see those animations and that horizon transform, the landscape transform. You can play with seasons, time. If you want to see what this place looks like in winter, you're only here for the summer. You can actually have a look at what the Pine Barrens looks like in a different season. So this is the outdoor classroom. Without belaboring this too much, you guys do amazing scientific work. This is really just to help augment that, provide space for you there, provide learning opportunities with signage, and explain some of the science behind the bird trapping and why you measure them. So that's that. Here's some fun activities to augment that as well, especially if there's not a moment where that activity is actually happening. So here's the concept of the bridge garden. This is directly opposed to the concept of the fragmented forest concept right now. This is an idea of now we understand there are problems, but we are inviting all of you, people who are excited to make a difference in conservation, put on your thinking caps. Let's think about how can we solve this problem. So a bridge is a natural way to do that. And so we have this bridge. This exhibit area, this next slide, is about solving this problem. But what is a bridge? A bridge can be air, it can be water, it can be a tunnel. It's a way of getting, how do you get, what does it mean, what does a bridge mean for a salamander? Hopefully it means you're going underneath the road and not over it, right? What does it mean to be a bridge if you're a lupine seed? So it's an interesting idea. How far they spread after a fire versus without a fire in the landscape. So exploring all kinds of ideas that way. Continuing to use, no, that's fine, let's move on to the next one actually. Diversity garden, I don't think much more needs to be said. We will be supporting this, explaining how the soil defines the plants in this area, providing different kinds of literature there. So this ties into the fire garden here, which is also part of the diversity garden. That's one thing that we always learned as a group, is that there is no separation between diversity garden and a fire garden. They can be a rotating one and the same kind of thing. So here as an example is a fulgurite, which is a rock made from lightning that strikes sand in this case, and it's a way of bringing back the concept of how fire originally came to the Pine Barrens and the role that people now play. So here we go. More details on the content of how fire and the landscape are one and the same. And habitat. Water, again, we will reference specifically the origin of the sand here, how it came to be with the glaciers grinding up the sand and Lake Albany and the wind. dune play area, one of the things that we have, as a group, have felt is very important is to get the visitors as involved with their hands as possible in the experience of being here. It's something that the scientists and the people who actually work here get to do with fire and management of the plants, but it's a critical part of how you get kids and visitors involved with the park. So we want to see a place like this, like the Dune Garden and play area where people actually get to destroy some of the dunes and not just be told to stay off of them. So it's a great place for them to see what they're about, play with them. Let's move on to the next one. And we have some fun activities. This is a proposed activity here where you can actually try to build a dune up so it has sort of a similar form as an actual dune using sand. And then there's some other examples where we have some just some sculpted forms so you can actually see what these crescent-shaped dunes are like. Since this is a strange area where the dunes are frozen by the plant life, it's hard to get a real sense that these are dunes, let alone that they have a crescent shape. So a little chance to get some hands-on experience on what these dunes are like underneath all this foliage. There will be an interpretation for the facilities explaining how you're also leaders in terms of your impact on the planet and use of fuel. And so now here are some just general design concepts based on some of the things that currently exist, but expanding that further. So this is large scale signage, medium, small, and then we have small ones for the plants.
So I think there's a lot of detail in this, and I think we said just about everything we intended to say. But so just to close, our experience of working on this plan, was we found the grounds committee, Blake and her team, really great to work with. We got fantastic feedback at every session, at every meeting. Very thoughtful, and it was a pleasure to work on this. And I wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody had any, I don't know how much time we have.
We're ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
Blake, I have to scoot, but before I go, I just want to say I totally applaud everything you're doing. There's so much, I think there's so much we can do to make the place more inviting, and just think big and continue the process. But think big, and a lot of what you are meeting that definition of thinking big. But it's great to see, and I think it could really catapult this place and get a lot more interest in our constituency within that 10-mile radius. I think this is good wow factor, so please keep it up.
Thank you.
I just have a question about pedestrian bridge. What's on the other side? Where does it land? What will the visitor get when they're over there?
So it bridges the two parts of the preserve that are cut right now by 155. There's a structure of trails over there that they would then have access to. Yeah.
Will the parking lot include EV charging station?
Yeah, that's something that we've talked about.
We're even talking, well, but the idea of the fleet becoming electric, that some of the vehicles for maintenance could also.
And the other thing I'll just note is that the Nation Conservancy were toying with the idea of some level of virtual reality, and some of the initial feedback is viscerally negative. And just like the idea of bringing people to nature and then having them look at screens. And so I would share that and just make sure that, in an educational setting, and I think when it's being used by an educator, it's one thing, but encouraging people to pull out their phones and use phones in nature is actually something we're finding that creates a visceral, almost like an anger to people. And people want to come to nature to be in nature and to kind of get rid of their phones. So I would just urge you to think about the utility of that tool and maybe be cautious and slow in your approach to rolling it out and test your audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I feel that myself.
Yeah.
So I very much understand that. And we have a couple of different product ideas to handle that. One is a viewer, which is sort of a standard thing you see in parks.
Yeah.
Change that, and you can have all the same functionality. But we also find the flip side is, of course, that there's also a demand for the park to actually have an app. So it's a strange duality.
You can see it while you're not in the park, for example, or something, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the way I see this kind of working out is, if you remember back, for those of you who were around, in 1998 or 1999, when we did an interpretive plan. That interpretive plan was the concept plan for what we're in today, this Discovery Center. Some of those things that were in that concept plan have become exactly what was proposed, and others not so much. But the general ideas are almost all there still, in some form or not. But that's interesting about a concept plan, because they're a little more malleable, obviously, than design. And Tony mentioned, and Blake mentioned, that the final product, that this is going to include some ballpark figures. So this is going to go on for a while. And I foresee this as, we're going to have a report probably at every commission meeting, if there's something to report about progress or what we're working on. Actually, Blake, you talked about next steps, where we're going to go from here.
So the next steps are to take this and start to really think about how do we engage the community in this, and what are the right sources of funding. And I really think that we have to have this visual document in hand to even begin those conversations. Chris has been starting some of those conversations, and we've had the conversations to begin with, but really starting to look at the funding sources for these kind of projects.
Yeah, projects like this, those of you obviously familiar with the Regional Economic Development Council, and this fits really well in that. Those Red Sea, they love projects like this that tie into community, natural resources, education, capital, that brings people in, the whole tourism thing. That's really what they're all about. So that's one of the things we're starting to think about seriously now. It does. It checks all the boxes, you know. So I guess the only concern, if I were a board member, I would say, well, is this going to compromise, you know, all the other work you do for your mission? You know, got to keep going on more stuff. We got more land to protect. We got more habitat to manage. This is just another project that we can do.
So is there an early kind of like, we want or need to do this right away? Or will this be another cycle of economic development council away from putting something in front of them? Are you going to put the whole big piece, or are you going to stage it?
I mean, that's part of what Tony and his team's going to do. I mean, you're going to put this in phases for us, and then we're going to have to talk about it internally as a team. And like mentioned, Steve Rice he's kind of the board representative, and if anybody else wants to participate in this at any level or at any time, welcome. But we're going to have to look at, all right, what do we want to do first? And Blake mentioned in the beginning, each thing, if we're going to phase it in different pieces, each thing has to have an impact. It can't look like, okay, we're going to do this and it's going to sit there for 5 years, and then we're going to attach that. You know, it's got to have an impact right off the bat. Recognizing that funding can, you know, what it does. So, quick questions? Anything else? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. That's great. So, we don't have to move into executive session. I can just report, just very briefly, under other business. One thing I forgot to mention in your board package is the board evaluation. That's the annual board evaluation. I want to thank Elaine Ball and her staff for compiling that. Lucky for Elaine, she's the chair of the governance committee, so she gets to do that. And that's a requirement by the authority's budget office. We provide that to the ABO every year. Again, that's in your packet. And then we've had some significant conversations about folks that were willing to sell land, and conversations that were happening with the Nature Conservancy. And I can say we've been moving along since January. On a number of these parcels, there's a number of them that are all one package, a total of 57 acres, and we're now at the point where there's a purchase agreement in the hands of the owners that's being reviewed by, there's multiple families involved in this, and by their attorney. And so it's one step at a time, but it's looking good. And I want to say thanks again to Jess and TNC, not just for helping with the legislation, which obviously I'm limited in what I can do, but also for getting back to the land. So I appreciate that. With that, is there anything else anybody has?
Motion to adjourn.